Welcome to the Reindl Report, a podcast out of San Diego, California that rewrites the definition of mediocrity.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
So come along for the ride as Paul Reindl takes you through the world of sports with insight, interviews, and incredibly bad jokes.
It just seems like the people that are so butthurt about it.
Did you throw a butthurt out there?
Yeah, I said butthurt.
2005 called. They want their turn back.
Yeah, walked right into that one.
Now, here's your host, Paul Reindl.
Whoa, how about that? That sounded different. What is going on, everybody? Paul Reindl here, another edition of the Reindl Report, episode 28, coming out on October the 19th. That would be the Wednesday of this week. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody enjoyed their weekend. A lot to talk about, a lot that I'm excited about, including that new Open. That sounded good. That was a little bit better than the past, huh? I mean, now it had been brought to my attention that the previous Open sounded like Jigsaw from the Saw movies, and it just was scaring the children away. So got that fixed, and it sounds way better now. So happy about that. I don't know. Well, this is kind of the downfall of a weekly podcast, and I've alluded to it before. When you go once a week, if something happens on a Friday and you're not putting out a podcast until a Wednesday or something like that, it's kind of old news at that point. I mean, yeah, I got some things I'd like to say about last Thursday's Chargers game, but it's been pretty much beaten to a pulp at this point. Chargers won. I mean, they moved to 2-4. Yippee, right? Beat the Broncos. Okay, that's worthy of some praise. Yeah. I mean, Trevor Siemian, look, he's not the quarterback of the future for the Broncos, anyways. Paxton Lynch is, but coming off an injury, he just didn't seem right. He could not throw the ball more than 10 yards. They were just throwing 5-yard passes, just little slants, just dinking and dunking all over the place. And it was kind of boring to watch. It's a pretty boring game. I mean, Chargers win 21-13. You know, I was there. It got interesting at the end. Sure. I mean, when Denver got that onside kick with like a minute something left, I'm thinking, oh my God, it's happening again, isn't it? But really the Chargers were in control the whole time. I mean, they tried to blow it. They tried to find another way to blow a fourth quarter lead, but they held on. Mike McCoy lives to die another day. And look, at this point, Mike McCoy, he's not going to get fired, not this year, but he's going to get fired at some point. He won't be the Chargers coach in 2017. There's no way. The team still didn't look great. I mean, Phillip Rivers looked okay. That was really, to me, it seemed like the true product of all the injuries that they've had to overcome. And they beat a weak Broncos team coming off a loss who was without their head coach and had an injured quarterback, and they're at home. So, I mean, I don't know. It was kind of like, I'm pretty sure we talked about it last week. It was, the perfect storm for the Chargers to win a game. Like, that would be so Chargers. Everyone's like, oh, when they lose, they're going to fire McCoy. And it's like, well, they're probably going to beat the Broncos. And they did. Again, I don't want to waste too much time on that Chargers game because, like I said, by the time you're listening to this, it was a week ago. And that's kind of the downfall of a Thursday night game. The advantage of the Thursday night game is now the Chargers, they get to take the weekend off and they come back to work this week, and they got the Falcons now who are coming off loss to Seattle. I want to talk about that game a little bit later on. They're going to be taking them on in Atlanta, so they're well rested, and Atlanta's a good team. That'll be a good test for these Chargers. I mean, if they want to try to turn this season around and salvage any part of this season, moving to 3-4 after beating the Falcons, one of the hotter teams in the NFL, that'd be a good way to do it. I don't know if I necessarily see that happening. I don't see them going down to the Georgia Dome and taking care of business, but it's the NFL. Anything's possible. Like I said, I haven't changed my thoughts on Mike McCoy. I just don't think he's a good head coach for an NFL team. I think he could maybe be some sort of good, decent offensive coordinator, but I just don't think he's got the huevos to be a head coach. I really don't. I haven't thought that pretty much the majority of the time that he's been in San Diego, and it's not going to change after one, almost, it was kind of like a fluky win over the Broncos, a team that generally, has the Chargers number, especially Phillip Rivers. And it was just a kind of a boring game. But, two things that stood out to me. No injuries, first of all. That's worthy of applause right there. I mean, my God, it was every single game somebody was getting hurt. And a key role player on this team was getting hurt, and not just for like a week or two, or questionable the following week, questionable return. No, we're talking like season-ending injuries. It was terrible. And if you're a Chargers fan, I'm just preaching to the choir here. You know all this, so that stood out to me. That was like the number one thing that stood out to me was, oh my God, they made it out of a game without any season-ending catastrophic injuries. That was great. And Drew Kaiser finally figured out how to punt the ball in an NFL game. Look, I mean, this was the number one punter taken out of in the draft out of college, and he looked good in preseason, and he has not looked good in the regular season. So that was one thing, again, that I noticed, and I was kind of looking for when I was at the game, sitting pretty far back, but nonetheless thinking, okay, Chargers are punting. I'm curious to see how this goes. And, he got some 50-yarders out there. He looked good. So I don't know if his back doesn't hurt anymore or what happened, but just given the way that the Raiders game went, last week, it was nice to see Drew Kaiser finally pay off, and the 4th-round draft pick finally pay off a little bit and prove that he can punt in an NFL football game. So really, that was kind of what stood out to me. This is going to be a relatively short podcast, no guests this week. We were way long last week, so really it kind of balances out. Last week, really good. We had Craig Elston on, play-by-play man for the Gulls. You can go onto iTunes or onto the rindlereport.blogspot.com and listen to that interview. AHL hockey season just started this past weekend here in San Diego. Gulls are 1-1, I believe, and I was at the game on Saturday. It was a lot of fun. Just really good to be back on the ice, and that was a really good interview with Craig, kind of setting up the season. And, maybe you don't know who the Gulls are. Maybe you don't know anything about hockey. Maybe you were like me and you had sparingly watched maybe a handful of NHL games on television over the years. I will say this about hockey. The Stanley Cup playoffs, I think, are second to none. I think postseason hockey is about as good as it gets. And I just couldn't get into it. I didn't follow hockey growing up. I didn't have a team growing up. So to live down here now in San Diego and have, the AHL affiliate of the Ducks down here, who were a good team last year and seem to have some serious potential to be a good team this year too. It's been fun to kind of get into hockey and become a fan of the Gulls and of the sport. So we had that on last week. Like I said, we went long. We had Downtown Tom on to talk about kind of a variety of things. We talked about the NFL. We talked about the Cubbies and the playoffs because Tom lives in Chicago, so he was able to give us a good feel for what the vibe is like in Chicago right now. It's the Cubs and the Dodgers. They're in the NLCS, and the Blue Jays and the Indians in the ALCS. Cleveland holding on to a 3-1 lead at the time that this is being recorded. Again, by the time you might be listening to this, things could be different, but it does appear that Cleveland will be going on to the World Series unless something crazy happens in Toronto. And really the National League side's totally up for grabs, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Do have some thoughts on the MLB. Again, that's something I kind of try to steer away from is playoff baseball, because when this is only a weekly podcast, look, if this was every day, we could talk about the game last night or, the game coming up tonight, stuff like that. But when it's weekly, things are going to be different by the time you listen to this. The circumstances have changed. Instead of a 3-1 series, it could be 3-3 or something like that. So it just doesn't make much of what I would have to say relevant when you're listening to this. So I'm looking out for you guys. And so, again, yeah, it'll be relatively short. We'll do the 60 seconds with Paul because that's all you need. That is where I hit the timer and I go through as many games that happened in week 6 in the NFL as I possibly can get to in a minute. Give just a tease of something that I picked up from that game, and then we'll come back and we can talk about it then afterwards. All right, so let's do it. 60 seconds with Paul because that's all you need. Let's get 60 seconds on the clock. Ready? Here we go. We're going to start with what I like to call the toilet bowl. The Titans beat the Browns 28-26. Look, Cleveland, the Cavs won a title, the Indians might win a title, and the Browns, they might win a game at some point this season. Maybe. I don't know. Saints 41, Panthers 38. Oh no, something didn't go in Cam Newton's favor, and now he's all sad. Patriots, they pounded the Bengals 35-17. You know what? Go ahead, Boston. Go ahead and plan on hosting that AFC title game. It's going through Foxborough. Jaguars 17, Bears 16. Good thing the Browns are still in the NFL, or else the Bears, they would be the laughing stock of the league. The Chiefs, they smoked the Raiders 26-10, and Chargers fans everywhere rejoiced. Seahawks, they squeaked past the Falcons 26-24. Stop it, Richard Sherman. Just stop it. And the Cowboys, they shot down Aaron Rodgers and the Packers 30-16. Tony Romo? I'm sorry, what? Who's Tony Romo? It's all about Dak Prescott. All right, going to try to unpack that as best I can. At least a couple of those games. Got some thoughts, some comments, and I don't know, we'll probably wrap it up relatively quickly after that. Let's go reverse chronological order here. I want to start with the Cowboys and the Packers. Dallas beats Green Bay 30-16 in Lambeau. And look, I've said it last week, there's something wrong with Aaron Rodgers. Okay, he is not the same Aaron Rodgers that we're used to seeing, and I don't know if it's just an off year and we're so used to a certain level of high play from him, but Jordy Nelson's back, and that was the knock last year as his numbers went down. You know, he was well below his career average in just about every category last season, and he's way beyond or below his career averages this year so far through 6 games. So I don't know what's going on. His accuracy is off. He's got plenty of time. I watched most of that Cowboy-Packers game, and he had plenty of time in the pocket. And Aaron Rodgers, there's very few that are better than him at moving around the pocket and extending the play and getting some extra time there. His accuracy is just off. He's not throwing the ball the way that we're used to seeing. But on the other side of things, Dak Prescott is incredibly impressive for a rookie. I mean, he broke Tom Brady's record of most consecutive passes to start their to start a career without an interception, and he looks like the real deal. Absolutely. I mean, 250 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. I'll take that. I will take that. I mean, Dak Prescott has looked incredible. He's got a 104 quarterback rating already through the season, and I don't know. I've seen people call him a game manager or whatever, and I have many times said that I don't see anything wrong with a game manager. I have no knock against game managers because at the end of the day, a game manager, their job is to get you enough quality of play to get the win. Do just enough to get the win. What's wrong with that? Alex Smith is a game manager. Alex Smith is also one of the most winningest quarterbacks in the NFL. So I'll take it. You know, Russell Wilson got knocked for being a game manager. Look what he's done in, 4 or 5 years now in Seattle? Okay, I'm okay with game managers. And Dak Prescott, he sure seems like the real deal. I mean, at 23, he's being handed the keys to Dallas, okay? He's riding this thing out. Tony Romo's hurt, and now there's this big controversy of should Romo get his job back? And look, there's the saying, you can't lose your job to injuries. Well, I say, hell yeah, you can. It would be foolish for the Cowboys to take the ball out of Dak Prescott's hands and give it back to Tony Romo. And it's not because, I'm not saying this because I'm notoriously known for criticizing Romo. I don't think he's as good as everybody seems to make him. I don't see much of a difference between him and Andy Dalton. There it is. I'll say it right now, okay? Decent quarterbacks can get you to the playoffs. They can't do anything after that. That's their ceiling, okay? Tony Romo, winning a terrible NFC East division and getting bounced in the first round, that's his ceiling. So why would you take the ball out of Dak Prescott's hands, okay? The team is rolling. He's got an incredible offensive line. Dallas has had the best offensive line for a while now. And Romo did okay, but Dak Prescott's doing great. Ezekiel Elliott is probably going to be Rookie of the Year, I would assume, unless Dak Prescott gets it. But these two rookies are flourishing behind that offensive line. And most importantly, the team is winning. Why fix what ain't broke? I would be shocked if Jerry Jones and Jason Garrett and they just, whoever else, they decide to go and give the ball back to Romo. I would be shocked to see that happen. I don't think it's a good idea. I really don't. Next here on my notes for this podcast that I wanted to talk about, the Seahawks and the Falcons. All right, Seahawks got away with one. They really did. Seahawks beat the Falcons 26-24. It was a sloppy game for the most part. Poor weather conditions up there in Seattle, as it typically is around October, November, December. But Seahawks, they get the win. They're up by 2. Atlanta's making a drive, trying to get into field goal range to get a last-second field goal and steal a win. And there was a pass interference call that was not made. And it was Richard Sherman and Earl Thomas covering Julio Jones, which, first of all, 3 phenomenal football players all involved on one play. It was kind of cool to see. But Richard Sherman completely holds Julio Jones' right arm, just completely holds it down as he's going up for the catch. Julio almost hauls it in with one hand. Almost made like the catch of the year that would have put him on like the 30-yard line and in field goal range to win it. But nonetheless, there was pass interference. I don't know if you'll find anybody that watches football that could watch that highlight and not think it was pass interference, but it wasn't called. That's just the way it is sometimes, and it's a non-reviewable play. It is what it is, right? So Richard Sherman, I see last night, which was a Tuesday night, or a Monday night, the day after the game. Monday night, Richard Sherman tweets out, everybody, something along the lines, I don't have it right in front of me, but something along the lines of, I've been hearing a lot of chirping about pass interference. And he attaches a video or a GIF of, is it GIF or is it GIF? I don't know. Somebody let me know. He attaches a little video of the beginning of that play when Julio's coming off the line of scrimmage and kind of hits Richard Sherman, pushes him out of the way. I think he hits his face, or the face mask hits his helmet, just pushes him out of the way. And so Richard Sherman's like, well, if that wasn't pass interference, then this wasn't pass interference. And it's like, yes, okay, Richard Sherman, that might have been a flag. That might have been a penalty on Julio. And so was your pass interference that you got away with to win the game. Simple as that, okay? Penalties happen. I just don't see why players need to come out there and nullify it, try to nullify it. Just don't say anything. You know you got away with one. What's the point in saying anything at this point, all right? Why try to say, well, if I was pass interference, how come that didn't get called? Come on, Sherm. You're one of the best cornerbacks in the game, but you pretty much hold the guys on every single play. You've said that publicly, that the NFL is not going to call it. The refs aren't going to call it every single play, so we're going to get away with it. We're gonna push the limits. Come on, man. Just leave it alone. I didn't understand that at all. And last, I wanted to end with the Saints and the Panthers game, but not the actual game. I wanted to end with what happened after the game. After the Saints beat the Panthers in a roller coaster of a game, beat them 41-38. Carolina loses. Carolina, they're having a rough season. They're having a very rough go of things this year. To go from NFC champs, Super Bowl contenders and last season, and they don't even look like they're the same team. They're 1-5 in a not very good NFC South. The Falcons lead that division at 4-2. They're one of the better teams in the NFL this year, and they were last year before getting just killed with injuries and not being able to bounce back. But the Buccaneers, the Saints, both 2-3. This should be a winnable division for the Panthers with the reigning MVP, right? Well, I want to talk about Cam Newton. Look, Cam, you're a great football player. Okay, there was no mistake in you being the MVP last year. The team that you play for, they rode you all the way to the Super Bowl. You ran into a great defense in Denver. You lost the game, it happens. And if you remember, after that Super Bowl, Cam Newton was not a very happy camper. He was very short, very upset in his press conference after the game. And you know what? Even though I've been very critical of Cam Newton, I granted him that one. To the Super Bowl. Yeah, I saw a lot of people saying, well, look at other teams that have lost. Look at did the Tennessee Titans after they came up a yard short against the Rams in '99. Were they complaining? Were they bitching in their post-game interview? Were they walking off the stage? I mean, Russell Wilson, after throwing that pick in Super Bowl 49, he owned it. He was there. He showed up. I think he even had a smile on his face, but that's just because Russell Wilson's a weirdo. He's wired differently. But look, biggest game in Cam Newton's life. Didn't go his way. I'll let that one slide. But now he's doing it again. Now that his team's 1-5, he just did it after their last loss, where he was very short with reporters. Multiple times his answer was, next question. And then it just reached a point where he said, screw it, and he walked off. Now, here's my problem with that. A, you're the quarterback, okay? That is part of your job. And I'm going to get to the whole part of your job thing in a minute. But you're the leader of the locker room. I don't remember you ever being that way when you guys were steamrolling everybody and going 15-1 last year. Where was you had the jovial, the dancing, the dabbing, the ridiculous amounts of celebratory dances after like a simple first down. Congratulations, you did your job. You got the 11 yards. Let's dance for 20 seconds. It got too much for me. I was all for, handing the kids the footballs. I think that's great. Score a touchdown, do your thing, dab on. But, I mean, come on, dude. A first down, chill out. But that was what you did all season long because things were going great. Things were going your way. It was very easy to celebrate and be, smiling and a little cocky at times. You had the mindset of, you want me to stop dancing? You want me to shut up? Come stop me. And nobody did last year. Well, somebody did in the Super Bowl, but for the most part, nobody did. I was relatively okay with that. That carried over into this year, though. I mean, my God, was it the first game of the year, opening night against the Broncos with a lead, and Cam sitting there flossing his teeth on the sideline? That's just disrespect, dude. You're playing a game. Have some respect for your opponent. Get your head in the game. If I'm sitting there, if I'm a Panthers player, and I'm like, what the hell is my quarterback doing flossing in the middle of a game? Don't let the game get too big for you, Cam. Because you're not bigger than the game. Come on. Look, if I'm a Panthers player, you look to your quarterback, you look to your head coach, you look to some key players, veterans on your team, to be leaders. And if your leader is only a leader when everything's going well and everything's going his way and everything's coming up Newton, but he is going to pout and act like a spoiled brat when things don't go his way, that's not a leader. So Cam Newton, whether you like it or not, you're the leader, okay? You're the face of that franchise. You are the starting quarterback of an NFL team. You can't just be happy and dancing around and a great teammate when things are going your way. You just can't do that. You've got to it's got to be on both sides. You don't have to be happy that you lost. Nobody's asking you to come up there with a smile on your face and say everything's going to be okay. Just come up there, take some ownership for the loss maybe. Talk about what the team needs to do to bounce back next week. Talk about some of the adjustments that need to be made. Talk about your frustrations. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't just not talk. Don't just be short and say next question and then walk off the stage. Now, I had somebody bring this up. They go, well, Paul, what about Marshawn Lynch? Because anybody that knows me knows that I grew up in Seattle. Not so much a fan anymore, but grew up rooting for the Seahawks. And if you remember a couple years ago, Marshawn Lynch wouldn't talk to the media. And everybody said, that's part of your job. Do your job, which I just told Cam Newton to do. Do your job. So does that make me a hypocrite? I don't really think it does, to be honest. Because, A, Marshawn Lynch wasn't the leader of that team. He wasn't the public leader of that team, I should say. That was Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll. And they were up there every week, win or lose, and they would do their press conferences. It's been reported by many people that Marshawn Lynch was a great leader in the clubhouse, in the locker room. The best teammate you could ever have was Marshawn Lynch. That's what players have said. But in front of the camera, he was not the leader. He was not the vocal, outspoken leader. He never was, never wanted to be, and always told people, that's not me. That's not who I am. So people knew going into it that he was not going to talk. And that was not only after losses either, even after wins. Remember, I'm just here so I won't get fined. That was when his team was in the damn Super Bowl. They had just won the NFC conference game, and they were going to the Super Bowl, and he still didn't want to talk, all right? Cam Newton was all over the place last year when his team was winning and heading to the Super Bowl. It was just when things didn't go his way that he would pout and not talk. Marshawn Lynch, he did that all season long. It just became a story towards the Super Bowl. But like I said, it didn't depend on if things weren't going his way, even when things were going his way and the team was winning and he was running all through opponents. He still was like, I don't want to talk. And everybody said, do your damn job. He technically filled out his requirements of doing his job, but everybody that covered the team knew that was all they were going to get because he never wanted to. And like the difference here is that Marshawn Lynch wasn't acting that way. I'm just here so I won't get fined and all the other short, quick one-liners that he would answer every question to. I'm thankful and stuff like that. He did that every time, every game, win or lose, not just when things were going his way, or not going his way, I should say. Whereas Cam Newton, totally boisterous and happy and cheerful and dancing around when things are going his way. And then he looks like he's literally about to cry because somebody took a toy away from him when they lose. That's the difference right there. So Cam, you've got all the talent in the world. You are a physical specimen on the field. You are faster, bigger, stronger than most people that you're playing against. You can and should be a leader on your team, a vocal leader, somebody that rallies when they're down, when they're 1-5 on the season. Yeah, no, of course, it sucks. We all know it. But instead of pouting and kicking and screaming and just acting like a toddler, be a vocal leader. Talk about the adjustments that need to be made. Get your guys, rally the troops. Let's go. You were in the Super Bowl last year. You're 1-5 this year. I mean, it's honestly, it's almost impressive to a certain extent at the difference in the level of play between the two Carolina Panthers teams of 2015 and now 2016. But look, that's my rant. That is my rant for the podcast for episode 28 here of the Reindl Report. And I think I'm going to end it on that note, coming up here on a half hour. Thanks for sticking with me. Shorter podcast this week. We'll be back strong next week. As always, go to the ReindlReport.blogspot.com. All the interviews and podcast episodes are archived right there for you, as well as on iTunes. And that's relatively new now, just about a couple months been on iTunes. So, it's my shameless little plug here at the very end is if you like what you hear, go ahead and subscribe. As soon as you subscribe, as soon as I press upload on my end, you get it sent right to your phone on your end, and you can listen to it on your phone, computer, however you listen to iTunes. I've been told that if you add just a comment, you can even be, this guy freaking sucks. Whatever you want to say. You add a comment, we go up in the ratings, and everybody's happy, right? So there's that. Follow me on Twitter at @thepolarbearsd. That's going to do it for this edition of the Reindl Report. We will talk to you guys next week.